It always comes to this. More nice Hey guys, back again to do another tattoo progress update today. Where I last left off, I talked quite a bit about my left sleeve, and I had a decent session with Rick. It was maybe 2 hours. I don't think I mentioned how long it was, but Rick and I generally seem to go between 2 and 3 hours. Sometimes we get, a little longer than that, and sometimes it barely happens, but the average is around 2 hours, and we got this chunk of color in here done again. It was the third time for that spot. Most of the sleeve is kind of in between 1 and 3 passes. There are some spots that have been hit more than others. There are some spots that are upwards of like 4 or 5 times over, just certain parts of them. Sorry, just fussing with the camera. So like there's certain parts of, say, the line work that's been done several times, as by the time we get back to do the color, the black is faded off to the point where we need to rebolster the clarity of the black to find the proper place to put the color and yada yada yada. And we more or less wasted a lot of time, same as what happened with my torso. Again, you can't approach color and black on black projects the same way as you can any other normal tattoo. I really would stress that for anyone that's watching my vlog on a regular basis, you should understand that by now I've showed this off enough times that it should just be taken as gospel. But if you line something with just black or just white, when you come back to it later, if you wait a month or two, the clarity of that line is going to be reduced. It will still be there, but the proper method to getting good result is to do the line and fill the same day. It's not really amazing to line something out and then let it settle before hitting it again. That would be a wise decision, especially for a large piece, for a normal tattoo. And a lot of artists will only do the lines in a session. So for example, old school tattooers would line something out and then they would kind of build up tones, and they would do the dark shading, then they would do the lighter shading, then they would do highlights or whatever, and tattoo would be done in 2 to 4 sessions quite often, even a medium-sized piece. But that approach doesn't really work for this. So getting Rick to understand and apply this, because he does understand this, it's just sometimes it's like he's stuck in his old ways and he's kind of fighting with his own instincts, and there are times when he'll kind of realize this all at once and kind of shake his head out of it. But for the most part, it's been a struggle getting him to do it the way it needs to be done. Whereas with Terry, what he had going for him was he was young into this, and very open to the idea that he probably doesn't know best, and also understanding that this is a different thing than typical tattooing. You can't approach this quite the same way. You really do need to do, even if you can only get that much done in a section, if you're doing, say, full color or full white and black on black, which is sort of like full color, you still do have to do all of that all in one go, at least for the initial big session, which is going to be funny because I'm going to talk about directly contrasting that in just a minute. But once you have your established base of color and black and everything working together, then you can come in and you can do highlights and tweaks more or less like as you want. So like you can come in and just do the pink again, or you can come in and just do the red again in these eyes like I plan to do. We won't really need to redo everything in there because it's already built up to a point where most of the contrast is there. We're just ramping things up. So you can do those things for seconds and third passes, but for the first pass, you really should build everything together. Now I'll talk a little bit about my session I had with Terry. Obviously, you'll have seen the thumbnail. Terry and I redid the spider webs. They're a lot bolder this time. I think they were a 5 or a 7 line the first time. Neither of us could quite remember. And they were still all there. All the webs were still there. For the people who were like, oh, look at that. He had touched them up only 5 months. No. They were all still there. They were just faint. And that's not because the black had even lightened up. Actually, the black was as it was. It really didn't change much. And you can see that in other places that we've lined. The black lines, they stay in there good, especially when you're doing black over color. Those lines hold up. It was just that, like, I think my thinking was like, oh, I want them to be, just backgrounding. But even for that, because again, we're working over black, it really is just better to go bolder, and things will be more readable from any distance. As you can see here, like, it's just a lot more striking. And the first time I did the webs, I mostly had nothing but positive feedback. It was mostly an overall benefit, most people seeing it as. And obviously I make these vlogs, I think I'm something like nearly 2 months ahead right now on YouTube. So my decision making, it's always more or less made up before I even get there. But what was interesting is there were some people who were like, oh, you should have left that alone, it can't breathe anymore. And it's like, there are a handful of versions of any tattoo that I've had at this point, because pretty well everything that I've done has had multiple versions and variations where it's like, yeah, by most normal definitions, like, that tattoo was done and really didn't need to be worked on anymore. Like, that could have been the case for me like 10 years ago. It could have been the case for me again 5 years ago when I finished the blackout. Like, and it could have been the case for this sleeve altogether more than a year ago. I could have not been working on it, because like the red velvet that's in there, yes, these parts are darker because we made them darker, but like, that hasn't been touched up. The red is where it was. Like, it's what it was. It hasn't faded back. It's not in peril. It's not like I would need to touch it up anytime soon. Like, I think it's at that place where, like with any color tattoo, you will want to touch up eventually, but that'll be more like, you've got some nicks from life, maybe you got a bug bite, or you scraped it or something, or you had some pimples or whatever, dry skin, whatever spots have left little patches. It'd just be residual wear and tear. It's not going to be this divine event that people seem to think happens uniquely to color on black tattoos. It's not going to be anything like that. It's just going to be life pains, you're fixing up life problems. So I could have left that sleeve alone, but this sleeve was built largely to experiment and show off possibilities, and I was very clear about that. And again, people become attached to the aesthetic, and that's a bad call with me. Like, I've never been selling aesthetic, and I don't know how many times I have to say this, because obviously no one is listening. I don't think there's an amount of times that you can say this in captions or short videos or long form videos, but I've never been Classic Cola. I'm not selling you the same product every day. My product will change. Whatever product you're getting from me is not going to be the same one tomorrow. And it's made me a hard sell, because early on, people got into my Instagram pictures and stuff. A lot of guys were like, oh, full color. I want a full color. But like, that looks great. That guy's got a cool style. And then when you start blacking it out, it's like, you lose those guys, and a lot of them hate you now for some reason because they liked that look, and especially my old chest piece. Like, people love that. And like, yeah, it's cool, but like, I was less attached to it than they were. And then, so those guys, they don't like you anymore. And then it's like, you get this love from this blackout community that was really, at that time, just about on the precipice of booming. Like, and, me and a few others that were getting into it around the same time, I think really helped it boom more. Like, it was ready for some influencers to kind of take it and make it really cool and mainstream, I think. Just my thought on that. Obviously, it's more mainstream now than ever, but it is what it is. I still think it's still pretty underground. It's obviously it's not like you're seeing them as often as black and gray tattoos, but it's a hell of a lot more established than it was. And I'm not taking full credit for that. I'm not even taking partial. It's like I was part of a wave of maybe second generation, third generation wave of people who were doing vast amounts of black work, and it just happened at the time that social media was a huge deal. And though a lot of people will say, oh, well, you probably did it for attention, it's like, no, my account was growing anyway, and I was getting tattooed around 3 to 5 times a week before I was even on Instagram. So this would have happened with or without that, just as a necessity to continue. So, but I was very clear that the blackout wasn't going to be the end of things. So when I start covering the blackout, you start getting, people that they liked the blackout and they followed you for the blackout. And so now they're at odds with you. And even now, that seems to be my prime export. Like I get a lot of people sending me blackout tattoos still to react to and things like this. And it's like, I have no hate for blackout. Blackout is great. But for me, it wasn't about having a cool, clean aesthetic so much. Like, that was nice. I still look back at my full black suit and I think like that was really sharp. Like just the look of full black sleeves and full black bodysuits and no clutter. I've got a lot of clutter right now. Like I'm making messes every day. It's getting more and more cluttered. I like it the same way I like the black, but like I have no attachment to any of it. And these roses could be orange next year. I'm not saying they will be, and orange is my least favorite color. Well, one of my least favorite colors anyway. There are places for it. But like, it's just a shirt for me, or like, what I get out of this is more about the experience of doing it and learning and stuff like this and the camaraderie and the whole culture of it. It's not so much about what you're wearing that day. And that's what's made me a tough sell, because so many people these days, like I've said ad nauseum, they just want to purchase a sleeve, and like this look is not one that you can get that way anyway. So to be partial to any part of what I'm doing with any of my tattoos now, it's silly, because you could only get to any one look that people are becoming attached with that I'm doing now. You could only get to this sleeve by being impartial and being experimental. That's the only way that you can get this result. There is no other road to that. So to then, be upset about the continuing of that doesn't really make sense, because it can't be done otherwise. Like if there was a person that was aspiring to an aesthetic, they wouldn't get this result. There's no way. It's not doable, because like if you were to build this sleeve over negative space, it wouldn't look like this. And by design, it is multi-layer. So like all of these things are interacting, even in just this one sleeve. I'm using this as an example for this video because these things are layered. It's not nearly as layered and insane as what's happening over here, for example. But like this can't be done in a couple of sessions, in no way. Like even starting from a base of nothing on your skin, you would have to build the red in behind the roses, and then you would have to do the spider web over top of the red, which is more commitment than most people want to make to a sleeve. But even in that case, it wouldn't have the same look because, well, for one thing, the colors would all be different and the black would all be different, and some things would be better and some things would be worse. We get quite a few people wanting to book in for these sorts of projects, and a lot of times they have no idea how it works. And that's understandable too. I'm not expecting them to, but like we have people who are like, "Can you do this as a cover-up?" And it's like, of course you can. It is a cover-up. Every part of me is a cover-up, and then you'll tell them that, and oftentimes it's like there's something that doesn't translate. Like it's like that can't possibly be true. There's no way that that's a cover, like, because you can't see any of the old tattoo through that. You can't see my first sleeve. There's some scar tissue up here that you might not even be able to see in this light, that you could still see a face of a guy I had. I had a little mime on my shoulder from a Lacrimosa. There's a German band that I like, German gothic metal band called Lacrimosa, for anyone who maybe has listened to them. Doubtful many. Yeah, there was this little mime face that I had. It was like their band mascot, and it was all scarred in. You could still see the outline of that, but that's for the first suit. I haven't really gotten any scar tissue from any of these roses, for example. If I were to black out this sleeve now, the only part of it that would still be visible probably would be that mime that I had, because that's where I got the scar tissue. But none of these new layers are really healing poorly, so you could check in here in 5 years, and I can't guarantee you that this sleeve will even exist, let alone look the same. And that's not because it's going to fade back to black. If it was black again, that would be because I made it so. And like I said, like, the black had an appeal to it, and that's where it's been nice bringing back some of the darkness to my suit. Ramping up these spider webs brings back this kind of dimension and clarity to things, while I still get to have that full color base. You get to bring darkness back to it, and I think a lot of people who liked the black work thought the red that I did over it was too colorful, too bright. But my intention for this suits, if I had an aesthetic intention, it would be some balance of color and black, and like more depth and more clarity and contrast as time goes on, and just overall kind of defining pieces that shouldn't be possible has become a real motivation for me. It's like, yes, now I've proven with beyond a shadow of doubt that you can do these things. Now it's like, how good can they be? What is the limit? Because are they always going to be a little fuzzy? Are they always going to be a little drab, or not as punchy as they could have been? Or can you get them there? And with this sleeve, I think I've proven that you can get them as clear and as contrast as any normal project. It's about thinking outside the box. And I've said this before, but I actually don't think that I'm going to live long enough to try all of the different ideas that I've had. And sometimes I'll come up with an idea and I can't even remember it, because there's just so many going through my head of like, what could you possibly do? Like, what is achievable is like, and this is where some people will say the tattoo industry has peaked and it's all downhill from here. And it's like, we have not even scratched the tip of the fucking iceberg for what is possible in human skin. It's probably the most forgiving medium of all. There's probably no medium that can take more art before it taps out than the human body. You can't do as much to a wall as you can do in our skin. It's not this thing that old tattooers have posited, that you can only tattoo someone a handful of times before they stop taking ink. And it's like I don't know. Like I said, there's parts of me that have been tattooed over 30 times. Like that same spot. I don't mean the general area. I mean like spot for spot on me that have been tattooed over 30 times. My whole upper body is getting between 10 and 30 layers, and it's still all it takes. So I don't know where this limit is, but that's what kind of, spurs me on and tweaks my imagination now, is not how good can I look necessarily, but how much is possible, how many different variations can you do. And when people are like, oh, that was the best version, you're never going to get to a better version of that piece than you were at such time. It's like, I don't mean to. I just mean to keep changing and seeing how many times you can do this and how different it can be. It's less about being better and more about being different than yesterday. All right, well, I'll talk to you guys again soon. Have a great day.